You must stay at home. Stay at home.
Hello, and welcome to Lockdown, hosted by Steve Bomford with Mike Davis-Marks. Our armed forces operate in challenging environments. Week by week, we'll explore what we can learn from their experiences.
I understand for this episode of Lockdown Podcast, you've got a budding film director and screenwriter.
Indeed, I do. His name is Sam Seeley, and he's got together with some former bootnecks to, as you say, produce a miniseries drama.
Former bootnecks, what possibly can go wrong? Let's listen to it.
Well, nothing, but he mentions cats and bootnecks, but let's have a listen to what he's got to say. Hello, Sam, and first of all, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Hello, how you doing? Yeah, you're more than welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just wondering if you're getting any sleep because you just had a baby, haven't you? So how's that going for you?
Yeah, it's pretty savage. People obviously sort of say to you that how hard it can be, and I was kind of like sort of 7 years of Royal Marines training, 3 years in the Navy. Like I'm adept to sleep deprivation. I'm an absolute expert. I'm not. The last 10 years mean nothing. It's a complete waste of time. It's taken some adjusting, but it's enjoyable. Like it is the best thing ever. People say it is the best thing ever, and it is worth it. It is worth it. Even at like sort of 2 a.m. when you've got a crying baby and you haven't slept.
So we'll talk at 2 a.m. and see if you're still smiling. Right? I'd be surprised. So anyway, some questions for you. I discovered you, as it were, on Instagram and your Sunray film, which we'll talk about in a bit. But it would just be good to get some background, really, to find out, this journey and where it all came from. So I guess we need to start with just you telling me a little bit about your military career in the Royal Marines, please.
Yeah, sure. I suppose I'll start at the beginning. I suppose I didn't really have any ambitions to join the military, really. I grew up, I was sort of really into sort of my outdoorsy stuff, sort of skiing and climbing and stuff. And I love mountaineering. When I was 18, I was actually on a trip in Nepal, climbing some mountains out there. And our guide, who had summited Everest twice, once solo, he was a super cool guy. He actually kind of like converted me over a sort of an 8-week period or 2 months. And he just sort of wore me down and just was anything I sort of done, he'd be like, oh, that'd be a really good trait that you could take to the Royal Marines kind of thing. And when I came back, I was like, it was sat with me. I considered it. I looked at it. But I was actually trained as a plasterer. I was a plasterer's mate. I trained to be a plasterer. And I worked in a nightclub at the weekend as well. So but it was something that never really left me. So at sort of 19, I just decided to join up. I was like, screw it. There's nothing really going on in Bexley Heath in Kent. So I don't really enjoy being a plasterer anymore.
There still isn't, probably, Sam. Still nothing going on there.
Yeah, no. And so at 19, I kind of just, decided to join up, and I was fairly fit from working in the building game, and I, worked a little bit harder to get a little bit fit for it, but nothing really prepares you for 32 weeks at Livingston. I think anyone can sort of say that. It's a culture shock, at least. But I really enjoyed training, and then you're around those guys, and that you really become a soldier. But it really enables you a foundation, I think, and a mindset that again can only be founded through that experience of 32 weeks that you then grow on once you start working operationally and working with the guys who have got all that operational experience. I moved to a fighting unit fairly quick. Went straight into sort of pre-deployment training for Herrick 17. And initially I was a light machine gunner, but then they needed volunteers for like a Valor man or a search operator. So I volunteered. I didn't have a family at the time. All the other guys I was working with kind of had kids or long-term misses. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do it. So it was 6 weeks on a course in Kent. I was like, I'll be at home for 6 weeks. That's ideal. But then obviously once I was deployed, I was the Valor man as such. Like I said, it's fairly hazardous role, but I really enjoyed the sort of responsibility of it. And I really enjoyed the sort of methodology of the training and how precise you had to be. And yeah, it was just another sort of level of responsibility that I kind of liked, and sort of another level of risk, which was kind of fairly exhilarating. It was kind of cool. Once in theatre, I didn't really do a lot of that. But I was kind of really looking forward to it, but I didn't really do a lot of that. I ended up really spending sort of sort of 3-4 months training the local police, which was probably the equivalent of herding cats. It was a unique experience to say the least, especially when you're living with them in like a 12 by 12 compound. It's worse than herding bootnecks on a film set. And then after that, I kind of took the role as our sort of CP medic, and I did a little bit of as a sort of a vehicle cover gunner, which was again quite cool. Had a few cool experiences with that. And then once I was back from Afghan, I kind of needed to choose a job. Otherwise, I was going to get pinged to be a chef or a driver or a signaller. And so I kind of wanted to be the master of my own fate. And that's when I looked at the mountain leader role. Like I said, I grew up in the mountains, so it kind of made sense. And sort of traditionally, that role was, reconnaissance and surveillance. And it kind of really appealed to me that I got to work in a small team, a super clicky team, out of the way, just doing our own thing. And I kind of think you could just sort of make your own rules up and sort of do what you needed to get the job done. Again, it was a super challenging role. And like some of the things I did for that was a lot harder than what I'd done in training and what I'd done in Afghanistan. But it was overall, it was really rewarding. And again, just something new. And that's where I actually specialised to be a cameraman again, a reconnaissance cameraman, and where I kind of really picked up a camera again, because I studied film and media at school, and then kind of always had a camera. I had a camera in Afghan and when I was going through training and stuff. But as soon as I started becoming a reconnaissance photographer, had access to amazing camera systems, so I didn't have to buy my own. And probably shouldn't be saying that, but I was using it for unofficial photographer for the squadron, for squadron piss-ups and anything squadron related really. So kind of threw myself into that, and I was like, oh, actually, I really enjoy this. I think I actually enjoy this more than being a soldier. And that's where I transferred to the Royal Navy to be a photographer for 3 years. I've just left the Royal Navy. But again, those 3 years in the Royal Navy, being a photographer, a lot of it PR based, was amazing. I got to travel the world just taking pictures of cool stuff, which was kind of a dream. But like anything, you want that sort of next level, you want to grow. And I suppose really that's where my freelance work came in, and Sunray, essentially. That's where Sunray was birthed as such.
Okay, so we'll come on to Sunray in a sec. I'm going to ask you some of these questions in a slightly different order listening to you here. So when we talked before the session, you talked about a thing called survivor's guilt. And I would just like you to elaborate on that, because it's quite important in the context of the story of Sunray, isn't it?
It really is. It's kind of our sort of primary sort of narrative beat as such. And it's something we sort of really focused on. And as well as that obviously links heavily and, a symptom of PTSD as such. I think a lot of people think sort of survivor's guilt is exclusive to the military and veterans, but it can happen to anyone. I think it's an experience, or it's experienced through feelings of guilt that occur when you're surviving an event that others may have not. And again, I think that's especially prevalent now in the sort of climate of the world. Even the NHS, the police service. Terrorist attacks around the world. You've got like police forces who can also go through this, and just anyone who works in the sort of public sector. I think it causes an element of mental trauma, and is heavily associated with post-traumatic stress, and they're very much interlinked. And obviously that's the sort of narrative beat of our story. We kind of wanted to portray this sort of lethal cocktail of sort of survivor's guilt. Through a multiple psyche of people, and through our sort of lead cast as such, through multiple perspectives. It's not something that's directly affected me as much, but it's definitely something that's affected key members of our cast, especially our sort of lead protagonists. And we sort of really lean on them to pull from their personal experiences, that emotional memory, to be able to sort of validate particular elements of our story. And just sort of get a better understanding that we can then create a more organic performance, and then create our own camera language to then relate to that experience as such, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Does that acting out, drawing upon these experiences and writing about them, does that help, do you think, the individuals concerned?
I think it really does. I think that was kind of how I started. I started writing as a release as such, and I think it's crazy how many veterans turn to acting as a release. And having had, like I said, it's literally like herding cats when you've got like 8 bootnecks on a film set. But it's almost nice to sort of relive those situations and talk about it, and act those scenes out as such without telling you too much of the plot. On the safety of a film set as such, and be able to stop it at any point and go, "Are you okay? Do you want to reset?" And then we can go again. And I think there's something really nice about it, and be able to sort of just lay it all out on the table, and not be judged, and leave it there as such. It's really nice. It's actually really nice.
Oh, that's good to hear. So what inspired Sunray? Because you've got your own story here as well, haven't you?
Yeah. I suppose I was I kind of originally birthed it as such. I was struggling for such a long time, years, and I think that was stuff from experiences in the Royal Marines and from my childhood. And it was kind of a monthly routine of, it just felt like I was on a carousel of sort of highs and lows. I had no consistency, no integrity really, no compassion. But that would come and go. It was horrible. I'd be laser focused one moment, super motivated, and almost feel like I'm just moving 1,000 miles a minute. But then I wouldn't sleep, I wouldn't eat, and I'd basically just push myself until I crashed. And then that's when the brain fog would set in. And I'd have like just lows, hours would pass where I'd just sit there and I'd struggle to make a cup of coffee, and where I just wouldn't be able to concentrate, focus my mind on one thing. I'd just jump from task to task to task to task. And that would range anything from half a day to 2-3 days. And it was kind of really destructive. And I'd make up for it on the highs, but ultimately then I would burn out again. My sort of default was blaming everyone around me. And when sort of things became too tough, I would just cut weight. So I would cut relationships, friendships, just because I'd have to shed weight, get back to sort of ground zero as such, and then sort of find that equilibrium and then reset, and then I could start again, which again it's just so destructive. And I think in a way, being in the military, always being away, having the safety of you're always going to get fed, you've always got somewhere to sleep, you've always got somewhere you can get your head down. It almost gives you that safety net, and where you could have those destructive traits, which is a real shame. I'm not saying the military is the cause of it. I'm just saying that sometimes it can provide that sort of safety net, as such. I basically got to the point where I was going to lose a relationship and lose the life I had that I built for 2 years. And I'm lucky I've got such a strong partner. She's the scariest woman I've ever met. Ever.
Will she listen to this? Will she be listening to this?
Yeah, she will. She's probably listening to me now, actually.
Right, okay.
She's and having now seen her push her child out, I'm even more scared of her. With a home birth as well, it was pretty intense. I'm lucky I had her, really, and she kind of forced me to face my demons. And the hardest part was admitting that I did have a few problems, and the first thing I did is I actually reached out to a member of our cast, Echo 3 Sledge, or Luke Solomon, in the pub. We went to the pub for a pint, and I just said to him, "Look, man, I think this is going down range. If I don't, I'm going to go to sort of the DCMH mental health clinic on Monday. If I change my mind before then, I want you to come in and drag me there." I was like, "I give you full reign to do what you have to get me there." And luckily on the Monday, I didn't change my mind, and I went. And that was the hardest bit. As soon as I'd kind of admitted it to my partner and my family and probably some of my closest friends, I was underway then. And I'm quite a proactive person. And as soon as I decide to do something, I will make it happen no matter what. So I started going through that process, which was frustrating at times. Because sort of conventional methods didn't really sort of sit in line with the way I work. And
what do you mean by that? Would you be able to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I just found that it was parts of it where sort of box ticking exercises,
Right.
and I couldn't relate to certain parts, and I was getting put in these different categories that I didn't necessarily agree with. And I don't think mental health's a linear spectrum. I think it's interlinked and webbed in so many ways through so many different experiences, and I just think it's too complex to put into a category or any sort of categories. So I think that's when someone really I recommended. I started exercising a lot more, which really helped and really got me back in line as such. But I felt like I still needed something else, and that's when someone recommended screenwriting or just writing in general. I'm not really the sort of person who would keep a diary as such. So I love films, and I was obviously a freelance creative at the time. So that's where kind of Sunray was born as such. And I basically I started writing things on post-it notes. I was like, I'm going to write a film, even if it's a short film. I started writing things on post-it notes, putting them on my front room wall. And by sort of at the end of the week, I had sort of 150 to 200 post-it notes on my front room wall of scene ideas, characters, weapon systems, all sorts really. And then I kind of, anything that I thought was a little bit too dark or a little bit too negative, I sort of physically just deleted those from my brain by taking them off the wall, putting them in the bin.
Right.
And then at the end of that, I kind of had these compiled post-it notes that I was like, oh, actually, this could be a story as such. And if I structure it slightly better and it's not in a set of post-it notes, I could probably make this into a story. And that was where Sunray was born. I had this title, which Sunray means troop boss or the boss, in sort of marine slang as such. But I think it has so many other connotations, really. You know, it's essentially a sign of hope. And that's where it was born. And I started reading screenplays, and I started watching films and reading screenplays, then mostly just reading screenplays. And I was like, I'm going to take a crack at this. And it started off as a short film. Then it's going to be my first feature. I'll find a way to finance it. It'll be a feature. And then as soon as I brought Dan and James on, who are, again, former Royal Marines turned creatives, they were the only two people that I thought, we could truly understand this, really. And Dan, I actually served in Afghanistan with. And as soon as I brought them on, that's where it grew into what it is now, really. James is amazing graphic designer. Dan's amazing at editing and visual effects. But we've all written an episode each. They're both really great at writing as well, and I think we work really well together. And there's this ongoing joke, because we were all at one point Navy photographers. There's this ongoing joke that we were never allowed to work with each other. I don't know why, but it just never happened. Whenever we tried to connect and work together in sort of a Navy photographer capacity, it never happened. So when we did actually finally get together outside of work on this venture, someone actually labelled us the unholy trinity, and it's kind of stuck. It's kind of stuck from there, and we've just it's just really grown from there. And now it's obviously a 3-part web series at 45-minute an episode, which is just it's amazing.
So you obviously took unholy trinity as a compliment. I can tell there straight off the bat. So had you written anything before this? I mean, obviously you'd done the photography with the Navy and your own personal interest, but just suddenly to start hitting the post-it notes. Had you done that before? No,
I'd written a shot list before. That was about it. But I think firstly, being a bone bootneck, I first had to teach myself how to read, which took a while. We probably might have shot it by now if I hadn't teach myself how to read. And then I had to teach myself how to write as well. I wouldn't say I'm nowhere near an expert yet, but it's and even that process was just so therapeutic. And just learning new ways to write, how to structure a story, and then sort of learning the rules so then you can break them as well. Which if you've met any bootneck, we love breaking the rules. We like to learn the rules like a pro, so you can learn the rules like a basic or an amateur, so you can break them like a pro.
Oh, very good, very good.
It's kind of something we live by, I think, and kind of just cracking our own. And I think that's kind of the beauty of Sunray, is even the sort of infrastructure on set and the way we want to film it and structure it. We're just kind of making our own rules, and it's still working. Whatever formula we're using, it's working. So we're just going to crack on. Yeah, it's really nice.
Wow. So you said you left the Navy now. Is Sunray your full-time thing? And is screenwriting going to be your full-time thing once you've done Sunray?
So I'm a freelance creator at the minute. So I do freelance for other companies, but primarily leading up to production, where we're working on Sunray. We soon realised how hungry of a beast it is. Like myself and the other two, Dan and James, like we'd only really ever shot commercials before and planned for commercials, and they're usually sort of 2 to 3 days, whereas it's a pretty hefty shooting schedule. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people, but we love the challenge, and I think what we love about it is the sort of collaborative effort, and it doesn't happen unless there's collaboration. And even to the point of the people bringing us coffees and organising our food. That if they weren't there, then it wouldn't happen. We wouldn't eat. We wouldn't be able to work sort of 19 hours days if we had to. And I think that's what I love about it the most, is just bringing people together. And I think especially when 80% of those people are veterans, you can imagine what it's like on set. It's challenging, but then it's still really fun as well. And I think the feedback we received just from the veterans we did have on the shoot in the trailer, like we shot the trailer over 3 days, and it cost us £1,000. Like we literally were on a shoestring budget. But the feedback we got from them saying, that's the closest thing I've had to that sort of brotherhood as such since I've left the military. And some of them had left the military for sort of 3 to 5 years ago. They really, really, really enjoyed it. And they're kind of like, we really liked it. Can we get in on the next episode and stuff like that? And I think to have that feedback of, that's the closest they felt to that brotherhood since they left was really rewarding to us. And that's kind of what we want to do. And even to the point of we've got to build a few sets for the series coming. We're using veteran plasterers, carpenters, builders to build certain elements of those sets. And like I'm looking forward to that part more than anything, to just get those guys in and sort of see what they're about as well and see what they can do. And it's really nice.
Are you directing it as well, Sam?
So we're all taking it in turns to direct. Like I said, there's 3 primary creatives, myself, Dan, and James. We've written an episode each, and our intention then is to obviously direct the episode we've written. With the other 2 taking the role as directors of photography and camera assistants, script supervisors as such, or assistant directors. So it kind of then enables us to sort of have that piece of the pie as well and be able to direct our own baby as such, even though there's consistency throughout the whole piece. And it's not uncommon now with sort of with TV shows, things like Mandalorian and True Detective, where there's a different director for each episode.
Yep.
It's so common. But I think because we're literally on Zoom to each other every day, we kind of have that, that overall story arc and narrative beat where it just keeps everything consistent. And I think the ability of having 3 people always seems to work with us. If one person's got a completely outrageous idea and then the second person agrees, then we go. Or if we're having a heated sort of debate about an issue or a topic or a narrative beat, we put it to a vote. So I think the 3 people system at the minute, the unholy trinity, is working for us at the minute as such. And it's just really nice to work with people as passionate about a project, as you are, really. And to even see it come this far, I have to pinch myself every day that I just get to work on this every day.
Your infectious enthusiasm for this is palpable. Obviously, I can see you. Our listeners will only be able to listen, but they must be able to tell in your voice and how enthusiastic you are about this. So, can you tell me a bit about? I know you probably don't want to give away the whole plot script. What is Sunray? Tell me a little bit more about it, because I'm sure our listeners will be going to be. This is your moment to convince our listeners to see it.
Yeah, cool. So like I said, it was sort of birthed from 150 post-it notes and turned into a screenplay, and then now a web series. It's basically a series sort of set against the backdrop of realistic, sort of fast-paced action, guided by high-quality military drills. And that was the huge thing for us, is every guy I know, even if it's an airsoft or a veteran, someone who's just really into sort of military drills, like if they see someone crack a poor weapon drill or some sort of poor tactical drill in the field, they'll pick it up. And I think for us, I think the slicker we can make that and the most realistic we can make that, that was really key. And that really drives the narrative beat. But Sunray, it's at its core is a human story. Yeah, we've got the cool tactical drills, we've got the amazing weapon systems, and we've obviously got real life soldiers, sort of implementing that. But at its core, it's a human story, and it's a sort of 3-part serial drama exploring the veteran psyche. And Sunray it challenges the perceptions of mental health and sort of the struggles that soldiers face when sort of reintegrating back into civilian life. But not just soldiers. We've also got a very key subplot of a civilian cast who also civilian characters who also suffer their own challenges, especially when it comes to survivor's guilt. Like I said, we wanted to show both sides of the table as such. We follow Andy, who is Sunray essentially. He's our troop boss, and who, after sort of dedicating his entire life to the service and the armed forces, sort of now really struggles to slot back into the world that he kind of no longer recognises, or he just kind of doesn't really fit in. So he also has to confront the death of his daughter following a fatal encounter with drugs. And he's kind of, his only path now is he's hell bent on finding those responsible. He hasn't really got anything to lose, and he's separated from his wife, and he lives alone. And kind of, the only world he does know is, sort of controlled violence, or the application of violence as such. And he, sort of falls into this sort of criminal underworld, and it's sort of all unravels in his wake. And, he's sort of joined, luckily, by his team members and the guys he served with, and their jobs sometimes to get him in more trouble. In check. We play that through the different sort of character devices as such. Like I said, it's a human story at its core, but also we've got the cool tactical drills, and we kind of get that fine balance of both. And I think the key thing for us is our primary cast are former Royal Marines turned professional actors. So their job, they are professional actors. And also our subplot cast are also professional actors, and our crew also. So the guys who are gripping, our sparkies, building sets, and primarily creatives are all former veterans, primarily former Royal Marines for some reason. We have got some Army, we've got some RAF, but we don't like to talk about them too much.
I didn't think you would.
We don't like to talk about them too much.
So so this is all funded, isn't it? Because you did a big Kickstarter campaign, haven't you? Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we kind of, that was the hardest part initially. Was we came up with the concept, and we were like, how are we going to make this? How are we going to deliver this? And we kind of thought we could make the best series or the best film in the world, but if no one wants to see it, or no one's got the ability to see it, then there's no point in us actually doing it. So what we initially did, we were really sneaky initially. We set up a sort of a ghost Instagram called Elite Military Forces. And we basically just posted any cool military picture we could find. And we started building that really sort of organic following of our sort of target market, sort of target demographic. And sort of overnight, when we were ready to launch Sunray, we glitched the whole Instagram and then started afresh. And Sunray was born on social media. And again, we had that sort of foundation of people who we know would want to see the product. And that's obviously before that, and that was the same time, that we launched the Kickstarter. And that was a lot of work. We learned a lot during that stage, and I think we've learned what works now and what doesn't. And it was an amazing experience. The first sort of 2 weeks, you're just looking at the Kickstarter all day, every day, like literally just looking for the smallest bump. You're just like, oh my god, we're definitely going to make it. We're definitely going to make it. obviously we were very lucky. We were looking to sort of kickstart £60,000, which for a project like this on Kickstarter is very ambitious. There wasn't many sort of that have been successful in that sort of funding range. A lot of the short films on there are sort of £2,000 to £3,000. So we knew we were being ambitious. We kind of wasn't getting our hopes up, but we were confident. And we worked very hard during those stages, doing a post or 2 posts a day to really sort of drive that sort of synergy and that sort of momentum. And you can't afford to lose momentum when you're kickstarting. We worked hard on that every day, and it's very important to us to reply to every single person as well. Anyone who had a question about the campaign, where they could see it, how they could help, even with 3 of us on it for 2 months, it was relentless, as well as managing full-time jobs. But we thank everyone who sort of pledged, and even people who couldn't pledge, because of the difficult times we're in, they shared, and even them sharing was more than generous. It was amazing. Eventually, we did manage to raise 66,000.
Oh, well done, well done.
Which was amazing, which obviously gives us such a good foundation to start the series.
So, like I said earlier, your enthusiasm for this is just amazing. I really, really like this, and I'm really quite interested in the whole kind of creative process. Is there anything that you would say about, creativity and its impact upon well-being? Because obviously you're talking about film and photography and writing, which is, a big chunk of creativity in this day and age. But is there anything you would want to say about kind of the benefits of creativity and maybe just taking the leap into trying something creative, whatever that might be for an individual?
Yeah, 100%. I think for one of my projects that succeeded, I've probably got about 20 or 30 that are just awful, that I would never want anyone to see the light of day. And that happens all the time. It still happens now. I know it happens to Dan and James, where you think you've got the best idea in the world, you try and make it, and you go, oh my God, I've just wasted 12 hours on that. That is awful. Or longer. So I think it's just literally just testing, adjusting, finding out what works for you, finding your tone, looking at people that inspire you. I still do it now. Like my favorite director of photography is Roger Deakins. Like, that man is an inspiration. I think he's an absolute god. And I look at his work non-stop, but also other people. And I think especially Adam Stone as well is an amazing DP.
So what films have they worked on, Sam? So, because I don't know those names, I have to be honest.
So primarily for Roger Deakins, you've got like No Country for Old Men, Shawshank Redemption, things like that. Just such iconic films, and just their tone is what I hope to one day be even 50% close to. But amazing. But at the same time, it's all about taking that inspiration from DPs, photographers, creatives you love, and then influencing that in your own work, but adding your sort of own tone to it. I think for me, the biggest thing for me is when I'm creating, whether that's writing or actually physically on set, shooting and operating. It sounds really cliche, but you just feel free. Like, you kind of like light your feet, you're weightless. You can do a 19-hour day, and it's only until you stop that you feel tired.
Yeah.
Just because you're so the only thing I can relate it to really is like being on patrol or something like that, like where you're just so focused on not dying that but it's not as extreme as that. The consequences are not as extreme.
Let's hope not, eh?
Let's hope not, Jesus. But yeah, I think it's the best experience ever. And I think anyone who's even experienced that for the first times, you can see it on their face when you bring, like, I recently brought my dad on set, and he never really truly understood what I did, I don't think. And I brought him on set for like 3 days, actually, when we shot the trailer, and it was such an eye-opener to him. And he's already got leave booked in for when we shoot the main production because he wants to be part of it. And he just says, like, I had no idea what you did and what it's like on set. I think the biggest thing for him, again, was the collaboration. 3 days on set feels about 3 weeks, and you're so close with that team by the time you leave that production. I think that's my favorite thing, is it's the closest thing to almost being in the Marines, but without all the negative points and such. Yep. Yeah, it's still like 19 hours a day sometimes. Yeah, sometimes you're you're just tired all day and you're behind and you're always constantly playing catch up. But it's just the feeling you feel is just like nothing else. And even when it's going wrong, sometimes it's still just an amazing feeling. You learn from it. And I think that's the biggest thing is you constantly make mistakes. I make mistakes every day, and everything I go on, I always look back at it and go, I could have done that better. I could have done that different. And I think it's being self-critical, but not to the point where you just convince yourself not to do stuff, and not comparing yourself to others. I think it's so easy to compare yourself to others and go, oh my God, that person's got 50,000 followers. I'll never be as good as them. And I just don't think it's about that. I think it's about doing what you do it well, and enjoy it. Like I'm in a very fortunate position where I get paid to do what I enjoy, which is it's just amazing. And it was like that when I was in the Marines. I loved being in the Marine until I didn't. So I found something new. And I loved being a Navy photographer until I didn't. And then I found something new. And I think it's just constantly just evolving, and challenging yourself. And like I said, even when you're on set, you're always stressed. You're chasing actors around, especially if they're bootnecks. And you're just belt feeding caffeine all day, but ultimately you just feel free. And it sounds super cliche, and it's so Chad me saying that, but you do. And yeah, I think as soon as you sort of surround yourself with a crew with a similar mindset, every day becomes slicker, and then everything's just shorthand. And there's something almost, like euphoric about working with a team where everything's shorthand. And you no longer have to communicate. Like it's super weird. Like it's like there's so many elements to like being in a creative team that are like linked to the military. Like the similarities are so uncanny, but at the same time they're so different. It's the best experience ever, and that's why with the team we've got for Sunray, it is I can't think of anywhere else I'd want to any other project I'd want to work on, to be honest.
I tell you, I'm going to give you a challenge to put a short advert together for the merits and values of creativity on well-being. I think, there's a challenge for you. So I'm going to have to bring this conversation down a little bit. We're in the middle of a pandemic, of course. So yes. I think you said to me the last time we spoke about this, you're sort of looking at May to get production started. Is that still your plan? Or is the schedule all a bit up in the air at the minute?
It's kind of put a spanner in a lot of things. In some ways, it's really helped. It's sort of given us time to really focus and be a lot more rigid when it comes to. Like I said, there's a lot of Zoom calls. When you're doing a script review over Zoom, you're sat on Zoom for like 3-4 hours just red penning each other's scripts. It can get a little bit heated, and it's just a lot more harder because it's a lot harder to pick up those social cues. And, whereas usually you just do that face to face, and you probably have a few beers whilst you're doing it. It's a bit more difficult to do that over Zoom. But that's the world we live in currently. So you just got to adapt. Again, you just got to adapt. I think we're still looking to shoot elements of it in May, and that comes down to us being able to keep the creative team quite small. And most of the scenes where we've got one character, so our lead protagonist Andy, we're going to try and shoot elements of that in May, early June. But according to Boris's roadmap, we'll be out in the dark in June. So hopefully we're looking to try and block shoot sort of June, July time. Like I said, it's an ever evolving beast. So but yeah, hopefully sort of bits in May, a little bit in June, a little bit in July. So it's hard to say really, especially in this current climate.
I know a lot of our listeners might be interested in finding out more about this, and we will put all like your Instagram, Twitter, and your website all as part of the podcast. Of course, they can find out more. But is there any way people can get involved in the project? Because you've said, obviously, I know you might have sorted all this out already, but are there any ways? Are you looking for extras or carpenters or anything like that way people, or can they just come and watch it being filmed, pandemic permitting, of course?
Yeah, sure. There's so many ways you can help us. And we've had so many people help us already. It's been so amazing. And again, even that's overwhelming how many people have helped us out. We've had a lot of companies, like we've got companies like UK Tactical, Warrior Assault Systems, Wiley X, Olympia Triumph, Portsmouth-based companies like Stag and Reekwood Brewery. We wouldn't have been able to make it without them. Like literally, they were kind of the foundation for everything. They've helped us out so much. So thanks, guys. There's companies like Black Onyx Concept, a security company that have really helped us out. And Wiley X, they do ballistic glasses. They've helped us out so much. And it's, without companies like that, we, again, wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be so well established without their generosity and just their support, really. They really sort of help validate the whole thing. I think local-wise, we are keeping it local. I live in Southsea, and so does James from June. So our whole thing really is to kind of shoot the whole thing in Portsmouth because the diversity of locations, but also support local businesses in doing so. So like all of our printing for our Kickstarter rewards and T-shirts and hoodies that we want to sell, that's been done at Sea Dog Printing, and a lot of the catering we want to do is going to be supported by local cafes, local businesses, and we kind of just want to pay for locations in Portsmouth as well, and just try and throw as much as we can back into the local sort of local community. Not only does it help us in keeping everything in one area, but it also we can help the local community, and it can be almost a community project. It has been so far. Portsmouth Council were great in helping us with the permits to shoot. We had 4 tactical clad guys on Eastleigh Beach running around, which for the uninitiated it could be a little bit scary. But yeah. Portsmouth Council was so great with the councils; they really helped us out, and so did Hampshire Police. Again, they were so relaxed, and really supportive over where we wanted to film and some of the content we wanted to film in certain areas. So I'm hoping their relationships that will remain consistent as we move on. But I think when it comes to guys wanting to support us, we're going to actually put out a casting call soon for certain extras. Like I said, a lot of our sort of primary roles are full, but I think if you've got any sort of experience in that realm or you want to sort of try it out, then sure, contact us on Instagram or email through our website. There probably will be chances where you might be able to come and see us film, subject to COVID. You can support us by sort of, if you didn't catch the Kickstarter, you can still donate and help the project through the website. You can help us by reading our blog. We do have a weekly blog through our different cast members and the crew. And like I said, even just purchasing apparel, T-shirts and hoodies, that money goes straight back into our production and kind of, enables us to just make it even better. And if you can't do any of that, just follow us on social media, give us a share, comment on our post, let us know what you think. And because I think the biggest thing out of all of this is feedback's key, and we're constantly evolving the script, we're constantly evolving the narrative, and constantly evolving our service offering as such, from feedback. So just there's no right or wrong answer really.
I think the credits of your film is going to be the longest bit.
Yeah.
Sam, I can't thank you enough for that. It's so infectious and enthusiastic, which I really, really like. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, you're welcome.
I would say brilliant. I would say to our listeners, we will have the links under the description in the podcast. So send me what you've got, Sam, and we will include that. And I really do wish you the best of luck with this project. And I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, so we.
Well, make it happen, mate. Brilliant. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So I think Sam's going to win an award for the most enthusiastic person I may have met, let alone been on the podcast. What did you make of that?
What, apart from me, you mean? I thought it was brilliant, actually. And what possibly can go wrong? 3 Royal Marines writing a screenplay for a web series, fast action-paced military drill program about something they know a lot about. Sounds good to me.
I've seen some of the sort of videos that they've produced to promote it, so it looks very exciting. I think they're equally excited and probably a little bit frustrated with the pandemic interfering with their production schedule, but I don't doubt they will get it done.
They're calling it Sunray, aren't they? Which is, I think he's described it as the name they call a troop boss. I seem to remember that used to be a term they called the officer commanding on, it was a radio term, but also has allusions to a beacon of hope, which I guess a lot of people need at the moment.
Well, yes, and I think that's indeed what the series is about as well. It's about the troop boss, but also the hope that comes out of the story. I mean, he was quite cagey about the story because obviously we want people to watch it rather than us telling the entire story. But yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah, he talked a bit about PTSD and survivor's guilt before we were talking about it, and I wonder to what extent his own personal experiences might have influenced the writing of this, and indeed the actual generation of it in the first place.
I think absolutely, as he talked about in the interview, this sort of writing was kind of the way of expressing himself, and I think it was him getting his ideas onto thousands of post-it notes and thinking, well, his experiences, and then translating those experiences into ideas for a script and a story is very much part of the process for him.
Yeah, he's had a really quite interesting military career. I mean, 7 years in the Royal Marines, having been encouraged or goaded to do so when he was on a mountaineering expedition in Nepal by obviously a former Royal Marine, and then straight out of training, which he says he enjoyed, into the hot cauldron that is called Afghanistan or Op Herrick. That must have been a baptism of fire.
I think it absolutely was. And I mean, enjoying the training to becoming a Marine, I've seen that on TV. It's not for me, I have to say.
No, I take my hat off to them. I think the Royal Marines are widely regarded as one of the toughest military courses in the UK, if not the world. And getting your Green Beret is a very, very, very special thing to do, and most people can't do it. There used to be a Royal Marine advert saying 99.9% people need not apply, but unfortunately, it turned out to be prescriptive, as 99.9% didn't apply. So they've changed it to it's a state of mind.
That's a great advertising campaign, isn't it?
Yeah, but it didn't have the right effect. And then he got involved in mountain leadership, which is a cadre within the Royal Marines. Got involved in photography as a result of that. Discovered that I actually quite liked, working with cameras, and then transferred this. I've not heard this before, from the Royal Marines into the RN photographic branch, where he then spent a further 3 years honing his skills. That's actually a very unusual career path.
But he sounded like he's enjoyed it, and he's got a lot out of it, hasn't he? I think it's given him the skills and enthusiasm to sort of express himself in a way that, you don't normally associate with the military, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and well, it certainly led to where he is now, because, and I've got we were talking about the Royal Marines earlier. I also want to take my hat off to the RN photography branch, which is, they're amazing photographers. I mean, and if anyone has ever been to see the annual Peregrine Trophy Awards, which is the RN Photographic Awards, I think they will be absolutely gobsmacked by the quality and the creativity of the photographs that are displayed. If you've never seen it, it's well worth looking up, because they are brilliant photographers.
I have seen some of them on Twitter. There's some very spectacular photographs out there, isn't there?
Yeah, and they're lucky because they get to play with helicopters as well. Often some of the best photographs are taken from airborne, so a helicopter is made available to them to get some really good shots from unusual angles. So anyway, it's what's led him to going down this filmmaking, screen writing path, I think.
Definitely has. There's no doubt about it. So he did mention that he did this at school as well, and I think it's just kind of rekindled that, hasn't it? And he's now left the Navy, and he's on the latest part of his journey.
Yeah. Sunray is the name of the project, I understand, and it's about a fictional troop boss, maybe modelled on someone he does or doesn't know, who is going through a bit of a hard time at the moment, struggling to fit in, having left the service, dealing with the death of his daughter down to drugs, having separated from his wife, living alone, and getting into a spiral of increasing violence. Doesn't sound like Sunday afternoon viewing to me.
No, but I bet you want to be an extra.
Oh, well, I'm glad you raised that, Steve, because have I told you about my previous acting career on this, when I was a wino in Skid Row at the Britannia Royal Naval College's production of The Little Shop of Horrors?
Is this, in fact, inspired by real life as well?
Well, there were some nasty critics that thought I was too typecast for the role. but I just think it just showed a little element, and I'm very willing. I'd love to be an extra for this. When production resumes, if willingly put my hand up to play some. I could be a member of royalty, perhaps. I could do my Prince Charles expression.
Stop. I've had 20 minutes of this before we even started recording this. I can't listen to it again.
All right. Anyway, I mean, Sam, if you're listening to this, and I'm sure you are because it's your podcast, I'd love to be an extra. So details to follow. One thing I do want to pick up on is he talked about collaboration and teamwork, skills that are absolutely crucial for working in the military, and particularly a close-knit brotherhood like the Royal Marines, where teamwork, where you're depending on each other, and collaboration is how you stay alive, frankly, in some of the world's hotspots. So interesting that he picks up on that now that he's left the services, and he's trying to get a film unit together to work together to produce a script and to make this series from it. And he really emphasizes the need for the team to collaborate in order to get the best out of them. So I thought that was a really interesting point he made.
Yeah, I don't think people appreciate how much teamwork and collaboration goes into the production of movies, films, TV, or any kind of creative endeavor. It's not always just a single person doing all the work by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, well, I hope to find out when he chooses me as one of the extras. So that would be good. And he also had a very successful Kickstarter and raised, I think, 66,000, which they thought was very unlikely for the genre that they were raising, and they did it. So that shows you that there's commitment on top of that enthusiasm and skill, and something people want. Yes,
and as he said as well in the interview about collaborating with local businesses or businesses more generally who can be involved in the project. So I'd be quite excited to see this actually, come to fruition, and then we can start working on the streets of downtown Southsea for the filming.
You're looking forward to seeing me as an extra, aren't you?
This is the third time you've mentioned this. I will speak to Sam and suggest it's a non-speaking part.
Well, okay. So there is one other thing I wanted to pick up on this, which I thought was really interesting, because he talks about breaking the rules. It's sort of part of the Royal Marine philosophy. And if your Commandant General Royal Marines are listening in, then probably not best to listen to that bit. But actually, it was something when I went through submarine command training called Perisher, we were taught how to obey the rules to the letter, up to the point where we could then break them because we knew how to break them in a safe and advantageous way. So I quite liked his expression, learn the rules to be like a basic and then break them like a pro. I thought that was we need, that would be interesting to see how that pans out.
Is that your pitch? So you learned how to break the rules like a pro?
I think I've probably overdone the pitch, so I'm going to stop saying anything about that now. Anyway, it was a really interesting interview. I think, as you say, I think really looking forward to seeing that come together and then play out on our websites.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it as well, and I think. We will also include lots of information about this, about their social media and how people can get involved. So I think they're really keen to have other people involved, particularly from the ex-service community, once they know, kind of what the production schedule looks like.
Yeah, fantastic. Can't wait.
Thank you very much, Mike. That was great.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for listening. The Royal Navy and Royal Marines charity exists to support sailors, Marines and their families for life. If you or someone you know could do with some support, give them a call on 023 93 87 1568 or drop them an email on support@rnrmc.org.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe.